Hi everyone. Today I thought I'd come to you from my very own kitchen because I really want to answer the question, where do I start? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jenny Barker, naturopath and health educator. If you've got bloating or diarrhea or constipation or both, you've got gas, you're feeling uncomfortable in your stomach or abdominal pain, these can all be symptoms of gluten intolerance. So when people say, in terms of food intolerances, where do I start? I always say start with gluten. So trial removing gluten from your diet first. So today what I wanted to do was just share with you some of the foods that I use and my family use in terms of gluten-free foods or gluten-free options. So both of my boys are gluten-free and I am gluten-free as well. So it's all become very normal to us. We're used to avoiding gluten and we feel much better off by not having gluten. So one of the things that's super important is bread. What do we have instead of bread? So there's a number of options here. There's lots of different gluten-free breads at the supermarket now. So this is one that my son uses. So these are all from New Zealand supermarkets. It's a sprouted bread. So this one is a dairy-free and gluten-free option as well, soy-free as well. And it does contain eggs, but that's a good option for gluten-free. In these supermarket breads, normally there are refined white flours, things like tapioca starch or potato starch. So ideally we're eating whole grains and not just part of a grain. For our best health, to get the most nutrients, but they are a good start in terms of if you want to trial going gluten-free to see how you actually feel. If you go to your local health shop or organic shop, then often you'll get some other options in terms of gluten-free breads that will possibly have some whole grains in them. So I know there's one that's got buckwheat in it and it's got millet flour, so these are gluten-free grains, and it's got lots of nuts and seeds, so you might pay a little bit more for it, but it'll be more filling and more nutritious for you. So there was one that I was getting from the local health shop and it didn't come sliced, so it was really good because you could actually slice it yourself, so you could make it nice and thin, because some of the ones at the supermarket I find are a bit thick, and then you could put it in the freezer on a tray so that it all freezes. Once it's frozen, chuck it into a container, and then you can just grab pieces out as you want, because when you're paying lots of money for bread, you want to make sure that you can use it all up and that it is not going to go moldy. You do not want to waste any. Okay, so I also have a recipe for bread, and this is the bread that I use, and I did actually swap the flour out this time. So it's not really a bread as in terms of it's nice and spongy, but it is what I use, and I toast it and I put hummus on it or avocado on it, or sometimes I might put honey on it. So this is a savoury bread, and so I have actually put the recipe for that in the Facebook group. I'll pop a link to the Facebook group down below, so the New Me Naturally community Facebook group. So that recipe is in there, and that is super easy. Like, I'm a busy person and I don't muck around kneading bread and doing things that some fantastic people do, and making sourdough, that's great. But you literally, with that recipe, it is really tasty and it's full of so many nutrients and whole foods. You literally throw everything into a bowl, mix it up, and then it just soaks for a while, and then you cook it. It's really simple. So that's breads. With breadcrumbs, so you might be crumbing some schnitzel, or you might be making some meatballs. So you can just get these brown rice crumbs. Normally you can get them at Countdown and New World, so they're easy to come by. Or you could just save the crusts from your gluten-free bread and put them in the freezer, and then put them through your kitchen whiz when you want to make some breadcrumbs. In terms of pasta, I've got two options here. We can get pasta made from so many different grains now. So remember, the grains that have gluten in them are wheat, rye and barley. So wheat is the most common one that's used in our foods. So those are the grains that you want to avoid when you are going gluten-free. So this one here is pasta. This is just made from lentils. So this is from red lentils. So you can use that. There's also, I've got one here. This one here is made from brown rice. So that's another option. You can get ones made from quinoa or from buckwheat as well. So there's all sorts of different ones that, there's so much more gluten-free food around now than what there ever used to be. In terms of crackers, again, there are lots of different crackers. Rice crackers, there's many different rice crackers. So rice doesn't contain gluten, so any rice crackers are fine. I've got those ones, and then these ones here, which are the bigger round ones. Those ones are brown rice crackers. Then you can get corn thins as well. You can get ones made from buckwheat, from quinoa, more like crisp breads. So no problems there. Now, in terms of baking, so if you're going to do some baking, or if you're like me and you have a son who is very good at baking and enjoys baking, my son just bakes Afghans, he bakes chocolate chips, Anzac biscuits, whatever he feels like baking, and he just uses normal recipes, and he just swaps the flour out. So he won't use the flour with gluten in it, he will just use something like this one here. So this is your Edmonds mix. So just a warning, this is a white flour, it is highly processed, it does have lots of starches in it, but in terms of making homemade biscuits, you know, it's an option, and it's a stepping stone to, you know, maybe sometime later on you make your own mix up with whole grains. But this one will also contain some thickeners, and it has a combination of flours. So that's the really important thing with the gluten-free flours, is you can't, when you're doing baking or making a cake or something, you can't just really swap out one flour. So just putting rice flour in, or just buckwheat flour. Normally the recipes work better if there's a combination of flours. So this Edmonds one, Countdown have another one. I'm sure there's other combinations as well. So very easily swapped out. And if you're using any flour in terms of thickening things when you're making gravies or something, you can just use this flour as well. Then we've got I don't actually eat these, but my family have these when they have tacos. So these are made from corn, so they are again fine, as are corn chips. So if you want to make nachos, they are, you know, that's all gluten free. This one here, tamari sauce. So this is gluten-free, and this is like your soy sauce, but it's the gluten-free option, so that's a nice one to add to stir fries and to make things nice and savoury. Now, the last thing that I was going to talk about was cereal. So this one here, it just happens to be the one that we have been eating lately. It is not a cheap one, but all the ones that have got nuts and seeds and all the good stuff in them are expensive. Now, this does contain oats. So some people that I find in clinic when I'm testing clients, about half of people are okay with oats and half aren't, for those people that are gluten-free. So about 50% are fine to have oats and 50% do better off oats. So you might be better to try not having oats to start with if you think you're being, you know, if you're really sensitive. But just remember, if you are having oats, then in New Zealand and in Australia, our labelling laws say that you must not label something as gluten-free if it contains oats. So if you choose to have oats, then just don't look for gluten-free oats. If you go to America, you can buy gluten-free oats, but you won't find that in New Zealand or Australia. I just wanted to mention that. So I just wanted to, you know, let you know that going gluten-free is not hard. Yes, any change, you know, does require some extra time and effort, but the changes that I have seen with clients in terms of what happens when they remove foods from their diet, and I would say that gluten is the number one culprit, with dairy milk or all dairy, including cheeses, would be the second one. But if you want to try something, you know, where do I start? Then I would say start with trialing removing gluten from your diet, and just monitor your symptoms. So track them. What are they before you start? And then monitor them, you know, each week as you're going through doing gluten-free. So I would expect that, you know, after 4 weeks or so, you will have noticed a difference, if not within 1 week or 2 weeks, in terms of your digestive issues, or sometimes it can be pain, headaches. You know, gluten or any foods can cause so many different symptoms in your body. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any comments or you'd like to see more videos like this, then pop a comment down below. All right, bye for now.